Hey guys, Toby Mathis here with Anderson Business Advisors, and today we're going to be talking about these horrifically scary letters that the IRS sent out with regards to cryptocurrency. I'm going to show those in a second, but first I'm going to do a little bit of background. When the Bitcoins came out and you had Ethereum and you had all these different types of cryptocurrencies, people treated it as currency, but that's not actually what it is. It's actually considered a capital asset. So the way that the IRS did it, and you can actually take a look up here, it's notice 2014-21, is they said, hey, it's actually a capital asset. And if you exchange it for something else, including other capital assets, then you are going to have a taxable event. And so they put out some guidance. They answered a bunch of questions. And this is just to make it really easy for you, because this is the IRS answering this, so you don't have to wonder, who's answering these things. This is what our government says, right? In the enforcement side of the Treasury. For federal tax purposes, virtual currency is treated as property. So if I traded you a piece of land for your services, obviously I sold the land. Like, there's a taxable event involved. I traded it for services. So they're going to look at it and says, is virtual currency treated as currency? No. Like, there's no doubt on this, guys. If anybody's telling you differently, they're just selling you a bill of goods. Must a taxpayer who receives virtual currency as payment for goods or services include in computing gross income the fair market value of that currency? Yes. Like, I don't have to get into it in any greater detail. If somebody's paying you in Bitcoin, you have to include it as a taxable event. They have to treat it as though they sold it. And then you have to figure out your basis in that capital asset. Somebody traded you something and you bartered, which is taxable. What is the basis of virtual currency received as payment for goods? And that is the fair market value. I'm just going to highlight it for you, of the virtual currency in US dollars as of the date of receipt. And you actually have a publication on it, basis of assets, publication 551. How is the fair market value of virtual currency determined? It must be reported in US dollars, so they have to figure it out. If it's listed on an exchange, then the exchange rate, and I'm just going to highlight this, is established by market supply and demand. So if you have it on an exchange rate, that's great. If you don't, then you have a problem. But I believe that all virtual currencies, you'd be able to determine what the value is on a particular day. So for example, I do services and you say, hey, I'm going to give you $100 worth of Bitcoin, and then it goes up to $200 the week later. Your actual taxable amount that you received was the $100. Now you have gain if you sell it, or if I trade it for something else. So let's say I trade that to buy some services or some goods. I have a taxable sale of $200 if that's what it's worth, and my basis is $100, which means I have taxable gain of $100. So I received $100 of taxable of a tax hit for the services, and I got paid for my services, so I have to report that. And then when I sell it for $200, my basis is $100, so I have to report that gain as well. Even though people would say you never sold it. Yes, you did when you traded it for something else. Does taxpayer have gain or loss upon the exchange of virtual currency for other property? This is what I'm talking about. The answer is yes. All right. And then what type? And they look at the character. It depends on how long you held it. So basically, if it's less than a year, it's going to be short-term capital gains. If it's over a year, it's going to be long-term. So and then they go into the mining. I'm not going to get into the mining for this because that's not really what I'm looking at. Mining is definitely taxable when you mine Bitcoin, things like that. Does virtual currency received by an independent contractor for performing services constitute self-employment income? Yes, it's just like you got cash, but you got a capital asset, so it's no different. I'm just getting paid in something else. It's like if I paid an employee by giving them a Corvette. Said, hey, I'm going to give you a Corvette instead of cash. I still have to do withholdings on that, still subject to all sorts of tax. Here's another one. Does virtual currency paid by an employer as remuneration for services constitute wages for employment tax purposes? Yes, if I pay you in Bitcoin, still taxable. Is payment made using virtual currency subject to information reporting? And the answer is for generally yes. So I'm not going to get into a whole bunch of this stuff, but I think you guys get the gist. Now what happens is, and there's a lot of these questions, so I'm just going to say you're going to be subject to penalties for failure to comply with U.S. tax laws, including criminal, which brings us to these wonderful letters that the IRS sent out. Now there's 3 of them, 6173, 6174, and 6174A, all escalating in as to their how important it is that you pay attention to them. So first off, this is the 6173. This is the general letter when they have received from like Coinbase and these others, or somebody's reported, hey, you have virtual, you have Ether, Bitcoin, you have some virtual currency. They're saying, hey, we have information that you have virtual currency and that you may not have met your U.S. tax filing and reporting requirements. And they go through a little list here. You may have failed to do these, and they're letting you know basically that they know that you have taxable transactions, and you have to let them know what it is that you did. So if you failed to file a tax return, so for example, you exchanged Bitcoin for services or goods, then they want you to amend your return as a 1040X and claim it. If you say, hey, you know what, I don't think I really have a taxable event and I didn't do anything with this and I just have an account, well, they're going to have different information. So they're going to want you to certify that a statement explaining what you did with that. Now, here's where it gets really important. Penalties under perjury. This is what happens if you lie, they could prosecute you. If you don't report it, they could prosecute you. They're usually going to keep these things civil, but if they see evidence of criminal, this is going to CID. So you want to not do this on your own. You want to make sure you're getting an accountant or somebody else to assist you on this and that they verify that what you're saying is accurate. We've all seen what happened in the whole Russia investigation, right? What are they getting people on? They're getting them on lying to the federal government, and so they like to do that. Here, I'm going to go to the next one, which is 6174. And 6174, again, is somebody not reporting the transaction on their personal tax return. And I don't care where you hold it. It does not matter whether it's foreign or whether it's domestic. If you have it, you have to report it in the United States. And so they're saying, hey, we know that that you have these Bitcoins and virtual currencies and that you probably used it, like you did some transactions. And they make it clear the tax obligation applies regardless of whether the account was held in the US or abroad. It's like, I don't know how else to put this. There's people out there that think they hold it in a foreign country. You have FBAR regs and you have US, like you have US reporting requirement, period. Even if it's not taxable here, you still have to report the existence of it, or you could be looking at a 50% forfeiture of the value of that per year. And that could be more than 100%. You could get nailed on this stuff. So then it kind of goes through where it would be reported on the different schedules. If you got it in exchange for services you were getting paid, then you're doing it on Schedule C. If you exchanged it for something else, like even another currency, it's still taxable. Some people were thinking you could do 1031 exchanges with currency because it's a capital asset. If you were, you'd have to use the 1031 exchange facilitator and you wouldn't be getting this letter because they would have reported it. So, and then Schedule E is supplemental income from rental, real estate, royalties, partnerships, S corps, all this stuff. So if you held it in a business and it passed down to you, partnerships, things like that, or you got paid a royalty in Bitcoin, or you got paid rents in Bitcoin, all that fun stuff, it's probably going on your Schedule E. And it just kind of talks, and it says basically, you don't need to respond to this letter. We know you're out there, and you're probably going to be getting, if you're getting this, they're just letting you know, hey, we expect to see this somewhere. Please make sure you're reporting it. So we know that you have an account. Please report it accurately. What's scary is the one that's kind of like this, the 6174A, and it's almost the same letter, except the very last line is kind of like, we may have additional correspondence about potential enforcement. They know something, guys. If you're receiving these letters, somebody's reported your account, you have a reporting obligation. They're letting you keep this civil. If you don't respond to this, or if you respond with lies, now you've escalated to a criminal matter. Take these things extremely serious. A lot of folks thought that Bitcoin and all these virtual currencies, cryptocurrencies, were somehow not going to be reported and that you could get away. It was people were always talking about it's the hush hush, it's the criminal world that's using them and all these things. Guys, the IRS is getting everywhere. The U.S. government can get its hands into just about anything. If you have these accounts and you think somehow they're anonymous, there's a very good chance that they're not. And they're very good at tracking this back to individuals. We're just seeing the beginning of this. Expect this to get and continue to escalate. Seek competent professional advice if you receive these letters, unless you are just going to report it all and you're like, oops, I made a mistake. I had some gains. I didn't know I had to report it. Report it, please. Do not send something back under penalty of perjury that is not 100% accurate, that has not been reviewed by a professional. You could inadvertently put yourself into a perjury trap, which can lead to some pretty significant penalties and jail time. So, again, take this stuff extremely serious. The Treasury is not pleased. The IRS has been tasked to collect what is probably going to be, I don't want to just say billions with the B for nothing, but it's a lot, significant amounts of unpaid taxes that should have been reported here in the U.S. That were, again, it's kind of like the old offshore things where people were doing these offshore accounts in Switzerland and all these places, and eventually they got to the brokerage houses and squeezed them, and they started reporting all this. Well, expect this to only continue to get worse. So if this is you, if you receive one of these letters, please take it serious, seek competent professional advice, and good luck.